Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the One Nation of Gamers 2016 circuit. My name is TJ, once again joined by That's Admirable. We're about to jump into the final match of the day, the final match of the weekend, and more importantly, the final match of feature tournament number 3. It's going to be Shoop taking on Chalky. And Admirable, these guys have both performed exceptionally well across the weekend. Chalky had immaculate play in the last game, and Shoop's a player who makes some of these plays that seem unorthodox, but there's these plays that give him the best chance of winning. Who do you think has the edge between these two players going to the last game, given what we've seen across the weekend, given their deck lineups? Who do you think has it?
Well, taking a look at what we've seen this weekend. So Shoop has had at times some strokes of brilliance, quite frankly, like figuring out these weird lines of play where he has these chances to win. But at times he's also been misstepping in a lot of situations and just slipping up, sequencing poorly, making his decisions out of order, kind of going step by step, and it's yet to cost him anything. But he's been putting himself in situations that are a little bit worse than he could have been in. Other than that, though, very tight play. Chalky, on the other hand, has been making the most of every single situation we've seen. So from what we've seen this weekend, it feels to me like the pressure may be getting to Shoop just a tiny, tiny bit. And as a result of that, not thinking through things as clearly as he normally would. For Chalky, though, Chalky's been in so many tournaments worldwide. I mean, he's a true world-class player.
Yeah.
And at this stage, there's no nerves for Chalky. He may get a little bit anxious kind of heading into a match, but it's not really affecting his thought process at all. We've seen him make clean plays over and over again at every single step of the way. The only thing I think I would have done differently is when he took the Animal Companion on that Animal Companion deadly shot tracking, kind of disrespecting the Flame Wreath Faces by not taking a deadly shot there is about the only thing I've seen from Chalky that I would even come close to criticizing. And I think given that, I have to give the edge to Chalky. But not only that, the fact that Chalky's lineup is matching up so well versus the Reno Warlock that I think Shoop's going to have trouble finding a way with that this game.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of the things you said. One thing you have to take into account, though, is Shoop is sort of the One Nation of Gamers king. He was very, very close. I think he was just a few points away, and many times in the final of feature tournaments from qualifying for the finals last season, qualifying for the grand finals at PAX last season. And this season, he's already off to a great start, being the points leader at the moment. So, this is his tournament. You don't really see Shoop in many other places. He does well in some other online cups, but it never takes him anywhere. And this is the one that's sort of his bread and butter. So, Chalky has been sort of the one to challenge him this season with many great performances up there in points as well. This is going to be a good one. Chalky went ahead and banned out the Control Warrior versus Shoop, and Shoop went ahead and banned out that Aggressive Shaman versus Chalky. So maybe Chalky in a situation where he really wants to target that Reno deck. Control Warrior is a deck that could do well against a lot of Chalky's lineups. That's quite scary. The Hunter and maybe the Zoo Warlock can do well against it, but other than that, can be pretty scary. Definitely going to have to see who's going to come out on top of this one. What do you think is going to be the deck that's going to be the weak spot here for Shoop?
Yeah, well, definitely the Reno Warlock, no question about it. I mean, him banning out the Shaman, not really much of a surprise. We've seen him continue to respect the power of that deck over and over again, and from Chalky's perspective, we've seen him ban out Warrior over and over again, maybe kind of understanding the matchups that his decks are portraying, not really coming prepared for those styles of builds and bringing instead decks that want to be able to pressure really highly. And with Warrior having some really strong plays with the turn 4 Bloodhoof Brave to stop some of the aggression, having executes to tempo in the mid game, those are very important tools that I think Chalky's decks are not built to handle at the moment. And so very much respecting that Warrior ban is something that's not too surprising to me here. I mean, Shoop is also very experienced on Warrior. I know he loves to play this class a lot. I mean, a ton of Control Warrior games for him. But everything looks pretty darn even, except for the fact that Shoop has that Reno Warlock. I think that's going to be his weak spot.
Yeah. So pretty similar decks other than that. Both of these players have Cthulhu Druid. Both of these players have very similar mid-range Hunter lineups. We have Aggressive Shaman for Shoop, and then the Zoo Warlock for Chalky. And then we have Reno Warlock for Shoop and the mid-range sort of Tempo Warrior for Chalky. So that's the breakdown. If you sort of take away the Cthulhu Druids and take away the mid-range Hunters, it comes down to the Aggressive Shaman and the Reno Warlock versus a Zoo and a Tempo Warrior. So, that sort of gives you an edge to Chalky as long as he can find a win with that Warrior maybe early on. So both these players have weak spots. We can talk about a little bit of what's on the line as we wait for these players to get ready. I think Chalky had to take a quick break right after the semifinal match that he just played. $3,000 for first place, and also that guaranteed spot at the 2061 Nation Gamers Finals, which will happen at PAX Prime at the end of August. Second place does go away with $1,500 and 16 Gagco points, which is a lot, but doesn't get you that guaranteed spot, which is definitely what these guys are going for. And look how magical Shoop's webcam just became.
Whoa!
We thought for the longest time that Shoop just had a really old webcam, that Shoop was using a webcam through a periscope, but it turns out it was just dusty.
He's back to the future. You get a look at that 5 o'clock shadow. This is yet to shave today. Or maybe he shaved 4 hours ago, like I usually do. I mean, I shave every morning. It's like, you know that movie, The Santa Claus, where Tim Allen just keeps growing the beard back over and over again?
Yeah,
that's what I feel like.
Same.
Not that I have a problem with it. I mean, I like it. I just want it to grow back white.
I've seen it.
And I'd really be a wizard. Shoop, he said enough.
Yeah. He just left. So, I mean, there might be some people out there who are watching who are like, why are they taking so long on the mulligans? They're not even clicking their abilities. But at high-level Hearthstone play and on tournaments when there's so much on the line like this, if you mulligan away cards early, then your opponent sort of gets an advantage because they can adjust their mulligans to the amount of cards that you mulliganed away. So, say, for example, you're playing a druid and you keep 3 cards in your mulligan. Your opponent can guess that it's going to be wild growth and you're going to have a curve behind it with removal, and so they can tailor their mulligan strategy to it. So when you get to high level tournaments like this, players will hold off on their mulligans until the timer goes down to not give their opponent any additional information and any additional advantage when it comes to their own mulligans.
Indeed. Chalky. Pretty strong hand here. I mean, it doesn't get much stronger than this one. He's got a lot of early tools. Now, against Reno Jackson, you don't need quite as many of these early tools. You're looking for something with a little bit more staying power. And that Twilight Drake that's going to be a little bit tougher for Chalky to handle. He may go for Fandral here. I mean, Reno Jackson does not have a lot of ways to handle Fandral this early in the game. And if Chalky ends up going for this, he's got a very clean answer to that Twilight Drake afterwards. It looks like he's going to go for Blood Mage and Wrath for 2 on that. And so not going to have the best answer. 5, 6. Yeah, this Twilight Drake's going to go a little bit unchecked here. Now, the Druid of the Claw does kind of put a stop to that, so he's got a few more tools left to fight with here.
Does a Vandal plus Wrath with Spell Power on the board deal 6 damage?
No, it combines them into one effect. So it deals 4 damage there, and then each spell power is going to give it 1 additional damage. Or spell power, however much it is. Like if it's Malagos, it would deal 9. If it's Blood Mage, it'll deal 5. It doesn't cast 2 individuals. It doesn't cast 2 separate spells.
Makes sense.
Yeah, Druid of the Claw is just solid answer to this. Just it is trading 1 for 1 with the Twilight Drake, unless Shoop has something to add on to this. Picks up Reno Jackson earlier. That Mountain Giant is looking mighty appealing right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that Druids sort of lack nowadays, with Big Game Hunter being increased to 5 cost, not really run. We saw early on in these Cthulhu Druid builds that Mulch was a card that was included, but it became a card that was a liability in a lot of matchups. And so a lot of people cut it and instead decided to run like 2 Raven Idols, so that way they could have an option to get hard removal at some points in the game, or a potential to have an option to get hard removal at some points in the game with Raven Idol. And I don't think it's in Chalky's list.
Yeah, I mean, we actually have not seen a Raven Idol from him the whole weekend. That's a really good point. And so Shoop going to go with the immediate trade here on that Mortal Coil. This is going to be a very nice Fandral here for Chalky. And the Mountain Giant gets delayed by a turn as well.
Gotta think this one over, because this is also a pretty good swipe.
Yeah, it really is.
Swipe plus hero power is a board clear, and he preserves the spell power. Fandral plus Wrath, you still end up leaving the Defender of Argus on the board, but I mean, this is just really nice.
I like the Fandral a lot more. It digs into your deck. It gets a 3/5 on board. The Fandral does usually require attention from your opponent, so Shoop's going to deal with that. He's not going to necessarily be able to play everything, and if that Fandral lives for a turn, that Nourish is going to be devastating.
Yeah, I mean, we're already sort of at 7 mana, and it's not like he's wants to play Cthulhu here that quickly, but...
Chalky's going to choose to draw his card as well. Really wants to protect this Fandral. Yeah,
I don't blame
that
him.
draw of the Nourish really changed the way Chalky played this game. He would not have done this, I don't think, without drawing that Nourish.
Yeah.
And now, unless Shoop decides to silence this, which is kind of a throwaway of that 4/3, he's not going to be able to deal with this Fandral. I mean, I'm almost assured this is going to be Mountain Giant this turn, and that's going to be a big Nourish for Chalky.
8 mana crystals and draw 3 cards.
Wow.
Huge.
I mean, and you can see Shoop just shake his head like, gosh, that's the one card I didn't want you to have. 2 Living Roots. Now, he can even kill off this Mountain Giant here, but it will cost him his Fandral if he wants to do that.
Cost him his Fandral, and it will also cost him his Disciple of Cthulhu. I mean, he could double Living Roots, double trade, be left with 4 1/1s.
It's going to be Brand, and he's just going to go wider on the board, deal in some damage. Hope that it works from there, but...
I mean, what this also does is it makes 2 very high threats on the board. Shoop has to deal with both Bran and Fandral, which both can have extreme consequences if you leave them up on the board. So, I mean, Shoop has many ways to deal with this, whether it be just hit face and Shadow Flame, then you don't develop anything behind it. He can go with like a Hellfire trade, but then again, he doesn't do anything behind it. He leaves one of these on the board. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe his only option is to Shadow Flame if he really wants to get rid of all this stuff.
I wonder.
If that's the case, do we see a tap first? And yeah, it looks like that's going to be a Shadow Flame on this Mountain Giant.
Yep. So let's get 8 damage out of it, but he gets some pretty good significant value here. But Chalky's reload is very strong. This is going to be what looks like a relatively long fight still.
Yeah. Double 5 drop, very powerful play.
Where shall I
Yeah, that Cthulhu's still pretty small. I think it's in 8/8 right now, just the Disciple of Cthulhu being the only buff used.
I said this might take a while, but Chalky's just getting aggressive here. I mean, he's trying to force some action from Shoop and then try to capitalize on that. And we've seen him do that pretty much the entire weekend. Just try to force plays from his opponent and then capitalize on it.
With spell power, Swipe becomes 5, Living Roots becomes 8. So he is very close to lethal. I mean, Cthulhu is also 8. So, I mean, he's got a potential lethal this turn. Do you just Reno Jackson here as Shoop?
I don't, and that's got to be what he's. Honestly, it's certainly something he's thinking about. And the fact that Chalky chose to charge this is what's causing this play here. So Chalky gets this information early on, and now we'll see if he can follow up on it. I mean, Dark Arakoa and Claxi Amberweaver are looking mighty good. He's already seen Shadow Flame, so like the giant AoE effects are gone, or that one giant AoE effect is gone rather.
Yeah,
but Twisting Nether is in Shoop's hand, so if Chalky overcommits here, he could really get bit by this.
Yeah. I mean, he could go hyper aggressive and double swipe face, and then Living Roots down the Reno Jackson. He push 18 damage, bring Shoop down to 12.
That might be what he's thinking about.
You don't overextend on the board. You still pose the same exact threat you did last turn, and your opponent's at lower health than he was last turn after using Reno Jackson.
Yeah,
Swipe is not the
Nether.
best card in this matchup.
Yeah, and then if they Twisting Nether, you have the reload of the Dark Arakoa, which it looks like he's going to go for the Dark Arakoa now.
Okay.
Certainly, I think he's trying to hide these swipes a little bit here. Like, wants to burst Shoop, like, unexpectedly.
Swipe is a way that you can have reach in a matchup where your only other reach would be Cthulhu.
Oh, Abusive Sergeant gets drawn. He could take out that Dark Arakoa with the big Game Hunter now.
That's actually a pretty big deal.
Yeah, not necessarily his best play though. It's just that unlocks the big game hunter, which before was just a completely dead card in his hand.
Well, let's look at his other potential plays. Alex draws a face, just to put a big threat on the board, make Chalky a little bit uncomfortable. But that one's a bit risky. Yeah, he's going to go for it.
Here we go.
Well, I mean, Shoop next turn has Silence plus Leroy Power Overwhelming. So if Chalky doesn't answer this, Shoop has lethal in his hand.
Yeah. So that's certainly something to think about. Cthulhu will certainly unlock Big Game Hunter.
Yeah, just a bit. I mean, it's only a 10-10 right now. I say only a 10-10, but it has the potential to be a lot bigger. Druid is one of the decks where it doesn't, because you usually only run a few Cthulhu buffing cards. Usually less than other decks is what I'm saying. No Doomcallers, no Scarum Cultists, no Beckoner of Evil. You don't have the class card that buffs it. You only have the class card that benefits from it.
I mean, Chalky's got he's got 3 different ways to go about this, and I'm honestly not sure which one of these is best. Like, when your opponent Alex, you have to respect that. So what does that mean? And swipe face. Is he trading the Azure Drake?
Nope.
Oh wow, that's lethal from Shoop.
That's game.
Yeah, Shoop set this up.
Shoop, look at his face. He's like, oh well. Yeah, Spellbreaker plus Leroy Jenkins and Power Overwhelming will end this game. And maybe Chalky had this thought in his head, but he figured, you know what? You have to have it.
Yeah,
or else I win next turn.
This is a misstep from Chalky this game for sure, and that's going to give Shoop the game. And you can see Chalky's facial expression, kind of like, yeah, that wasn't the one I was thinking about.
Yeah.
So the Spellbreaker really coming into big effect in that game in particular, and that was the deck I was worried about for Shoop. And now that that's tucked away, honestly, it's a major turnaround. Shoop has almost certainly gotten an advantage at this point. I mean, not only just because of the game 1 win, but just simply because the Reno Jackson isn't there for Chalky to continue to put pressure on with the rest of his builds.
Yeah, all the rest of his decks are going to line up well against a lot of Chalky's decks. Looking at that Warrior in particular, I mean, Reno Warlock is another deck that lined up pretty decently against the Warrior, and that's out of the way, but still, Shoop definitely now has a huge advantage. That's a big win for him. And I feel like he sort of just snuck it in. I feel like Chalky sort of handed that one to him and said, you know what, have it, and Shoop did. And a bold call to Alex Straza the turn before, but he knew exactly what he was doing. He was setting up for that turn 2 lethal. Chalky didn't expect it and went with a line of play that definitely punished him.
Yep. So now at this point,